Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you all for being here. This is going to be an audio live because I have to share the screen often, so no need to put on the webcam. So anyway, it's me, Ari does it. You can call me Rashid. I prefer that. And if you're here, please let me know in the live chat you're here. Thank you very much. Shalom, Les Brown. Thanks for being here. So, all right, I'm about to share the screen with you. Read from you from Luke chapter 4, verses 14 till 30. And afterwards, we'll go to Matthew chapter 13, verses 54 till 58. Now, I'm glad it's clear. I'm using my gaming headset also. So I'm using my gaming laptop also. So the memory of the laptop is quite high, so it should be good quality. Oh, I see Tammy's here too. Hi, Tammy. Okay, let me share the screen. Hold on. Yes. There you see the screen. Let me increase this over here. Can you all see the screen clearly? Let me know. If it's not clear, I will increase the screen a bit more. You can all see the screen clearly? Let me know, please. Tammy, can you see it too? Okay. So let me again. This here happened in around a year after Jesus began his ministry. Jesus started his ministry at age 30. And when he was baptized at the Jordan River, went to the 40 days in the desert temptation also. Afterwards, when he started his own economy, he gathered disciples. And Jesus was a carpenter, or better said, an architect. But also, he built furniture, he designed houses. So Christ was economically active. He has been doing that for years, throughout his 20s. And now in his early 30s, he gathered a fellowship of other economically active men, and he started his own economy. So what Jesus was doing was an economic movement. Okay? Now, this was over a year when Christ had his own economy. And one thing I want you to understand is that, hold on, during that time when Jesus lived in Palestine, yes, that's how I want to call it, it was divided like this. Yet Idumea, Judea, Samaria, Galilee, Decapolis, Perea, and yet Phoenicia. So yet all those districts, yet Philistia also. But overall, this was all run by the Roman Empire. And this area over here, all of it, was under the rule of King Herod. Now, King Herod died around the time Jesus was born, somewhere at that time. So eventually, his sons took over, and the sons divided the kingdom. So one of the sons ran this area over here, the other one ran this area, another one ran this area. So the kingdom was divided. So you had the Roman Empire and this client kingdom of Judea, which included all these other districts also. And back then, Jerusalem was an international city for politics and economics. And yet the coastal towns were quite important. So based on that, you clearly see that Galilee was not such a relevant place. Don't get me wrong, there was an economy over there, but it wasn't that relevant. Most of the economic power back then, and political power was in the south. Here in the north, near the Sea of Galilee, in this lake over here, the economic power was not that big. Because Damascus was not economic center, Jerusalem was, and those places were. So this area in the north was a periphery, or we say a ghetto. This is what this area was. There was a lot of prostitution going on, a lot of crime, and a lot of political revolts also. So this place had a bad reputation back then. And this is where Christ grew up. You can even read in the New Testament, one of the Pharisees even said, nothing, said as if nothing great or good comes out of Galilee. But anyway, you can read that yourself and get and understand. When when Jesus was a little boy and his parents returned from Egypt, they went to Nazareth for him to grow up because they didn't want to remain too close to where the Herodian dynasty was. Understandably so. So Jesus was age 31 by now, the same age I have now. And he already had his own economy. He had around 70 disciples. So he had the whole economic movement, and he was doing supernatural acts, signs, miracles, and all of that. Now, let's read in Luke chapter 4, verse 14 to 30. But before I continue, is the context clear of the situation where Christ grew up in situation of the situation back then? Is it clear unto you? You need to understand the context of what's going on first. Is the context clear unto you? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know. Is it clear? So, okay. Now, let's read. And Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit into Galilee. That is this area over here, the periphery, the ghetto that I talked about. So he was in the south, being active, and eventually went back to They went to Galilee. And there went out a fame of him throughout all the region, around about all the region. What region is talking about? This region over here, not just Nazareth, but all the region. Everywhere here in this area, people talking about Christ. Verse 15, and he taught in the synagogues, being glorified the fall. Now, one thing first, the synagogue was never instituted in the Old Testament. Synagogues were cultural centers that the Judeans established somewhere under the Greek Empire. So synagogues were never instituted by the Heavenly Father. Those were cultural gathering places that they later established to preserve their Judean culture. All right, now, so let's continue. So the synagogue was not the predecessor of the church. Did you know that? Because church comes from Circe, which was a Roman goddess that it worshipped at the highways. But anyway, okay, let's continue. And when he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as was his as custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up for to read. So Christ, he had this, he had the habit to go to synagogues and to be a guest reader. Back then, when they went to a synagogue on Saturday, which we would call the Sabbath, you would have the rabbi being there teaching, but you also had a guest coming in, and the guest would read from a scripture from the Old Testament and sit down. Christ was a guest reader. Okay, he would often go to synagogues reading portion from the Old Testament. There was also the New Testament back then, so we just read portion of scripture. He used to do this. So this time he did this in his hometown where he grew up. And by the way, can you all hear me clearly? I just want to know for sure. But it seems like the Wi-Fi is buffering a little bit. Can you all hear me clearly? If ever you can't hear me clearly, just let me know in the live chat immediately, please. Thank you. Can you all hear me? Okay, so Christ went to Nazareth, and as you see, Nazareth was a place where he grew up, and Nazareth was at a crossing point. So everyone that was traveling from, let's say, Syria all the way to Egypt had to pass through Nazareth at some point. But that's the only reason Nazareth had some importance. But that's where Christ grew up. And from Nazareth, you can easily go to Jerusalem. You go to Bethlehem, to the lake, to the sea, also to Syria. So it was like a central point. So if everyone around knew about Christ, of course, people in Nazareth knew about him. So when he came to read, what happened? Verse 17. And there was delivered unto him the book of the prophet Isaiah, just Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found it at the place where it was written. It's apart from the book of Isaiah here. This is what Christ read. This from the prophet, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he hath anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He hath sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to preach deliverance to the captives, and a covering of sight to the blind, to set liberty to them that are bruised, to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. And he closed the book. So Christ read this part from the Old Testament and he closed. And he gave it back to the minister and sat down. So Christ wasn't there to get attention. He just came there as a guest reader, read it, and sat down. And the service continued. And the eyes of all them that were in the synagogue were fastened on him. So get it straight. Christ gained fame all around. Everyone knew about him. He talked about his ministry, his economy, that he had over 70 disciples, that he had a own economic movement, only 31 years old. Everyone was talking about him, including the politicians were talking about him. So when he came, he didn't just came as a 31-year-old that grew up over there, but that lived somewhere else. He came back as an economically relevant man who had his own small community. Christ came as someone having his own small community. He came as a community leader. So Christ left likely around age 20. Some in that area he left Nazareth. He went to Capernaum. Well, let me search that up. Where the heck is Capernaum? Anyway, he went to Capernaum over there. He lived life, had a job, earned money, and late at age 30, started his ministry. 31, he was prospering over the place. And he was there as a community leader amongst them. So everyone was shocked by it. Let's read verse 21. So if they were all focused on him, why didn't they ask him questions or whatever? And he began to say unto them, this day this scripture fulfilled in your ears. It's the day scripture fulfilled in your ears. And all bare him witness and wondered at the great words which proceeded out of his mouth. And they said, is this not Joseph's son? Hold on a minute. Now, literally speaking, Christ was not Joseph's son, because the Heavenly Father brought forth himself as human being through Mary's womb. Okay? But socially speaking, he was Joseph's son. Joseph raised him. And Joseph was a carpenter. And Christ became a carpenter too. Christ was the eldest of all the children. Mary and Joseph had other children, their own children. But remember, when Mary was still engaged to Joseph, she became pregnant. Everyone thought, she slept around. Of course, nobody would have believed it was God himself bringing himself forth as a human being. So everyone thought, well, Joseph's wife, their first son, Jesus, is not Joseph's son, really. She actually slept around and gave him a gift. But anyway, that was context around it. But still, he was known as Joseph's son. Well done a minute. Joseph was dead at this point. I don't know why he died so early, but he was dead. He was not around anymore. And Christ was not a carpenter anymore. He was a community leader, being the head of his own economy. Why are they calling him Joseph's son? What this has to do with it? They wondered, they were amazed by the knowledge that came out of his mouth. Now let's go to verse 23. And he said unto them, Ye will surely say unto me, this prophet, Physician, heal thyself. Whatsoever we have heard done in Capernaum, do also here in thy country. So Christ was ahead of them. He knew what they were thinking. Of course he knew it. He was God, but he's God. So anyway. And he said, Verily I say unto you, no prophet is accepted in his own country. Wow. But I tell you of a truth, many widows were in Israel in the days of Elias. That's Elijah, when heaven was shut up for 3 years and 6 months, when a great famine was throughout all the land. But unto none of them was Elias sent, save unto Sarepta, a city of Sidon, unto a woman that was a widow. And many lepers were in Israel in the time of Eliseus the prophet, and none of them were cleansed, saving Naaman the Syrian. And all in the synagogue, when they heard these things, were filled with wrath. Now, what Jesus was saying here were actually historical events. It's true that when Elijah was around, there was a famine throughout the land for 3 years and 6 months. That Elijah only ministered to a widow that was a foreigner, and there were many lepers amongst on the Elisha, the successor of Elijah, but it was the Naaman, a Syrian general, that got healed. And Jesus said them before that no prophet is accepted in his own country. What he's saying is true because all the prophets of old were not accepted by their own people. Isaiah, Jeremiah, um, Jonah, um, Elijah, Elisha, you name them. Go all the way to Moses. None of the prophets were well accepted by the Israelites. So what Jesus was saying here is actually historical facts. But here it comes. Remember, Jesus was a community leader back then. He was not a homeless poor guy coming to beg for money and to work for money. He was a community leader having his own economy. He was the head of an economy. The locals didn't have their own economy. They relied on the provincial economy of the Roman Empire. Christ had his own economy going on. And he revealed he was a prophet. So him revealing unto them that he was really a prophet, this angered them. And guess what happened? They became so angry at him. The people, the crowd became angry at him. They rose up and thrust him out of the city and led him onto the brow of the hill whereon the city was built, that they might cast him down headlong. They tried to lynch him. They were so angry, they stood up, pushed him out of the town, trying to throw him off a cliff. But he passed through the midst of them, went his way. So Christ turned invisible and left. Now look at this. They tried to kill him. Hold on a minute. It was the Roman Empire over here. Okay? Hold on, let me show it to you. To give you a general idea over here. This was Rome over here. And Rome was not an easy area. Especially on this area over here, it was quite a contested area. There were a lot of foolish things happening over there. Yet the Herodians were into pedophilia and all of that. You had the Roman governor killing people often just to prove a point. And now you had Christ having his own economy and they turned on him to kill him. Wow. Okay. This happened when Jesus was 31. Now we go to another incident also happening in Nazareth. This was late in Jesus' ministry. By now, from the 70 disciples, only 12 were left. Things have changed a little bit more. Christ has accomplished a bit more. So this was somewhere right before they arrested and crucified him. So let's read Matthew chapter 13, verse 54 to 58. This is the second time he went to Nazareth. Remember the first time, in the beginning of his ministry, they pushed him out of the city, tried to kill him. It's the second time. And when he was come to his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, inasmuch that they were astonished and said, Whence had this man his wisdom and his mighty works? Because remember, since the first incident, Christ continued. This is about 2 years later. 2 years later, Christ has accomplished much more throughout the region. Christ comes again, and I'm not sure if it were the same people there or other people, maybe relatives ever, but anyway, he came back to the synagogue in Nazareth and he taught. Again, people came to ask themselves, is this not the carpenter's son? Why carpenter's son? I want to say Joseph's son. Because there were doubts whether he was Joseph's son or not. Is his mother not called Mary? By the way, this is an insult. You never mention someone as a descendant of their mother in Hebrew culture. Because that would mean that the mother was a prostitute or a hoe hoeing around and then she doesn't know who the father is. And his brethren, James and Joseph and Simon and Judas. This is not Judas Iscariot, it's just another Judas over here. So Christ had brought male siblings and he also had sisters. Jesus' younger siblings still lived in Nazareth and they had families. They were married, some even had children, they had jobs over there. But and here it says, and his sisters, are they not all with us? Whence then had this man all these things? And they were offended in him. But Jesus said unto them, A prophet is not without honor save in his own country and his own house. And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. All right. So Jesus went back a second time. Now, first thing first, sometimes Jesus did things. I'm thinking, Jesus, what are you doing? I mean, if the first time you came there, in the prime of your ministry, and they tried to kill you, why the heck would you think after 2 years I'm going there a second time? Jesus, stay away. But okay, Jesus gave them another chance. And Jesus went, and miraculously, they didn't try to kill him when he arrived. And remember, Jesus was well known. There were even Roman soldiers and Roman officers supporting Jesus. So right by this time, Jesus had even a support of some of the government folks over there. Some of the military and government people even supported Jesus. So that may be the reason why they didn't go off at Jesus immediately, like they did first. In the beginning of Jesus' ministry, Jesus didn't have military and government people supporting him. With support, I mean there were people in government and the military that were actually following Jesus secretly. So Jesus had secret military and government support. And likely all the government and the military here, they tried to kill Jesus, and likely they got the repercussions from the Roman authorities. I'm not sure, but likely they did. Anyway, Jesus now not only did he have his own economy, but there were also people in the Roman military, even people in the local authorities that even supported Jesus secretly. Secretly, I said. So right this time when Christ came, he had backup from the military and from the government. Even though the government and military as a whole were not for Jesus, there were still people in the military and government supporting Jesus. All right. So this time Jesus came and Jesus had a backup support from the military and the government from within. So Jesus came and they didn't lay hands on him. He was able to preach over there, but guess what? People were murmuring, complaining. Hold on a minute. This Jesus over here, isn't he the son raised by the carpenter called Joseph? Is he the son of Mary? He's the son of this woman who likely was hoeing around and got pregnant, just know who the father is? Isn't Jesus not the elder brother of James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Isn't he? Does he have Does he have younger sisters living amongst us here? How come this man is so big, so important, so relevant? See what goes on over here? The people in Nazareth, they lived in a periphery, or we could say a ghetto. There was crime everywhere. There was prostitution everywhere. There were conflicts everywhere, political uprisings. And from amongst them, from this ghetto, you have this young man that grew up amongst them. He left. He's unmarried, has no children, but he has his own economy, and there are married men and families following him. And now there are even people in the military and the government secretly supporting him. Whoa. But hold on a minute. So you mean to tell me that this Jesus grew up amongst us? that he is actually the one that will end up leading over Galilee? You mean to tell me that we all need to get along with his lead now? And guess what? This angered the people. Now look, the first time Jesus came, they tried to kill him. And ask yourself, where was Mary, Jesus' mother, when this happened? Where was Mary? Where were James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Where were the sisters of Jesus, the younger sisters? Mary and Joseph have a lot of children. Where were the younger siblings of Jesus? Where were the cousins, the nephews of Jesus? Where were they when they tried to kill him over here? The second time he came, where were they? And remember, when Jesus had his ministry, his mother, that's Mary, and his siblings came to have him arrested because they thought he lost his mind. And Jesus said, my family are those who do the will of God. So Jesus was not on good terms with his own family. So the second time he came, they didn't even support him. They didn't support him the first time. They didn't even stand up for him. They didn't even reach out to him and say, Jesus, they tried to kill you. What is this? Nothing. And here is the core of it: unbelief. Yes, that's it. Unbelief. You don't realize how big this is. When people are in unbelief, they are resisting better. It's one thing to admit a situation is bad, but are you willing to give up the bad situation and receive better? You can be upset with the bad situation. You can be fed up with the bad situation. You can flee from a bad situation. But if you flee from a bad situation, but you're not going to better, you will end up in worse. You have to give up the bad situation and all the attitudes that kept you in the bad situation for you to have better. In this case, the people of Nazareth, they were fed up with the Roman Empire. They were fed up with the Roman taxes. They were fed up with all the corruption amongst them. They were fed up with the prostitution, fed up with all the crime. They were fed up with all of that. But the question is, were they willing to become better and safer human beings and to participate in solutions? Were they willing to do that? No, they were not. They were not. So they were all making excuses. They were all making excuses. Do you recognize this in your own life? I hope I'm not talking about you right now because I have a right to assume that you've failed using excuses in life and you just actually deal with these. Haven't you noticed in your life sometimes people come with excuses towards you? Dumb excuses don't even add up. And let me tell you, when people come with dumb excuses, let them have their excuses. Don't confront them and don't unmask them. Let them be with the dumb excuses because listen, once the excuses don't work anymore, it's going to be full rage. Think about it. The people of Nazareth made excuses. Oh, Rome has a military over here. So if you try to do something, the military will come after us. Oh, Rome has a lot of rich pagans in it. So we don't have that much money. Oh, there are a lot of crazy people amongst us who will sabotage us. Listen, nothing stood in their way to establish their own local economy and to become more financially and economically independent from the Roman Empire. There were other pagans throughout the Roman Empire doing this, starting their own small economies. They just paid the taxes because once you pay taxes, the government can't use anything against you. So they pay taxes, had their own economy, and they had more freedom. What stood in their way to do the same thing? Nothing. None stood in their way. And why was Galilee such a ghetto? Because they were neglecting their own area. Galilee was a country that was neglected by its own people. They neglected their own country. And the Romans knew this. So the Romans were upset with them for neglecting their own area. Everyone around knew they were neglectful. Here's the thing: Jesus broke the cycle of neglect. And by Jesus leaving Galilee, starting his own economy, and now coming back as a community leader, it showed it actually made them all look bad. Because if Jesus over here, whom you guys called a son of a hoe, that's really how to call Jesus. If this Jesus, the so-called illegitimate child of Joseph, if this Jesus was able to leave town and come back as a community leader, I'm sorry, what have you guys been doing all along? And Jesus didn't even have support from any of us over here. Jesus, without support from the community, he went away, worked a job, saved money, started his own economy, and now he's a community leader. What have we done over here? So Jesus' prosperity made them all look bad. Before I continue, is this clear unto you why Jesus made them all look bad? Let me know in the live chat. Is it clear unto you? Okay. So Jesus, if Jesus would have left town and gone to Capernaum, and Jesus went to the south, and Jesus ended up arrested or in prison, or Jesus ended up just working and never getting anything done, they would have been fine with him. But because Jesus went and he succeeded and he even came back to contribute to Galilee, they're upset. If Jesus betrayed his own people and said, you know what, F you all, I'm out of there. And Jesus would have become selfish and narcissistic, they would be okay with him because they would say, look at that fool over there. He grew up amongst us and now he thinks he's better than us. They could pretend to be the victim and get along. But now Jesus was not a narcissistic asshole. Jesus went back to contribute. Jesus left, became big, and came back to contribute. But what have those people done all their lives? They should have said to Jesus, you're right. We have been neglectful. You're 31 years old and you've done more in your 31 years than we have done throughout the decades. Jesus, especially old people said, Jesus, you're right. We need to change. You, as a young man, you embarrass us because we haven't done much for our community. You know what, Jesus, you deserve to be a leader over here. Just involve us. They should have been humble and get along with Jesus lead. Because Jesus has proved himself to be a capable leader. To start your own economy from scratch on the Roman occupation in an area with a lot of crime and demon possessed people, that's a hard thing to do, and Jesus did it. So those folks had no excuse whatsoever. But what did they do? Did they concede their excuses and actually just get along with reality? No, they didn't. Instead, they turned on Christ. Now, the first time they tried to kill him. Oh, and by the way, on the Roman rule, lynchings were forbidden. So the public could even get in trouble with the Roman authorities for doing that, but they didn't even care. The second time, they didn't want to risk killing Jesus because Jesus had support even from some government and military people. And you don't want the military to be after you. So they behaved. But even then, because they couldn't lay hands on Jesus like they did the first time they grabbed him, tried to push him out of town to try to get them killed. This time, they were restrained. They couldn't lay hands on him physically. They couldn't physically violate him this time. But yes, the first time Jesus came, they physically violated him by pushing him around, beat him, all of that. That's what happened. This was quite horrible, what happened the first time in Nazareth. The second time, they couldn't physically do anything to him, but they still energetically hindered him. Why do I say that? And he did not many mighty works there because of their unbelief. Now understand this. Jesus, as God himself in human form, he could do anything, but he operated as a human, he operated as a human believer. Just to teach us one thing, as a believer, when the public around you resists you, they don't have to physically assault or attack you. Their anger towards you alone will bring psychic violence on you. Their anger alone will hinder you in what you're doing. So Jesus suffered psychic violence over you, and the psychic violence hindered him in what he was doing. Now, how many of you ever felt hindered in life? Not hindered by yourself, not by you being lazy or procrastinating. I'm not talking about that. Laziness and procrastination is something you need to outgrow and unlearn. But I'm talking about how many of you experienced that you have been hindered from the outside, whether it's in your career or in your sexuality or in your finances. How many of you have been hindered externally? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know. How many of you have been hindered externally? Now understand this. This is why you were hindered externally. The people around you, they don't want to see you do better. They had their own worldview of them as the victims or of them as the good folks who have it all together, and you doing better in life will make their fairy tale look bad. So, because you doing better in life would make them look bad, they insisted in sabotaging you and holding you back. Okay, this is something Jesus, God Himself, even for my experience. Listen, 2 years passed since the first time. The first time they beat him up. Yes, the first time they beat him up, tried to murder him. Yes, they physically assaulted God Himself in human form. That's what they did the first time, and they didn't know back then it was God Himself in human form. The same God they claim to worship every Saturday in the Sabbath. 2 years passed by, and they still wanted to kill him, but they just couldn't kill him. So instead of because they couldn't physically kill him, they were just hindering his life. So understand this: when the public cannot take your life, either because they don't want to go to prison or because they're hindered, they will at least they will at least destroy your quality of life. If they can't take your life physically, kill you, they will hinder your life to deplete your life all quality. Maybe, um, maybe let's say you're a female believer and you want to have a husband because you either want a family or just want a husband to be with to glorify the Heavenly Father. You downloaded dating apps, you went on several dates, you even had a few relationships with men, sexual relationships with men for the past decade or two, but it never succeeds in you staying with a man. Then there's always conflict. Either you end up leaving or the men end up ghosting you, and you think, what the heck? Why are all the men I encounter eventually leave me in such horrible ways? You even going to therapy to think, is there something wrong with me or whatever? At the end of the day, you realize, hold on a minute, I'm a quality woman, I'm feminine, and I'm willing to contribute to my community. Why is it that I keep encountering stupid men like this? Then you go into prayer and fasting. Long story short, you find out that they were doing voodoo and juju on you just to hinder you from ever getting a man. Now you find out that one of your female cousins was doing pagan rituals on you to hinder you sexually. And you think, what? And his cousin herself, she's married and she has children. She just didn't want you to be married to have children, so she could also look down on you to feel good about herself. Because she's a horrible wife and a horrible mother, but at least when you are single all the time, going from man to man, it makes her look better. So this female cousin wanted you to be worse off so she could appear better. And others agreed with that female cousin. And those same people, even your own relatives agreed with that cousin. But in your face, they always pretend like they're your family, they love you, but behind your back, they wanted you to be sexually messed up. They were calling you a hoe, calling you a bitch, all of that. Why? Because at least it made them feel bad about themselves. Such things happen to a lot of women, including female believers. They end up having a sexually messed up life, going from man to man. All the sexual relationships don't work out, and even begin to think, what's wrong with me? Lady, the thing that's wrong with you is you don't notice that the people around you didn't want you well. And this happens with a lot of women, believers and unbelievers, I'm telling you. And it's not even men doing it to you, it's other women doing it to you. Other women will not likely kill you as a woman. They don't. But they will use psychic violence or even paranormal aid to hinder you. Or let's say you're a man, okay? Let's say you're a man and you just started your own business. Suddenly, you can't get any customers. Suddenly, you have accidents in your house all the time. Suddenly, you can't pay the bills anymore. Financial disaster, and you think, what am I doing wrong? You go to an accountant, even the accountant thinks, what goes wrong? Why every time you're about to make a step in your business, either your washing machine breaks, your car breaks down, or whatever. There's always something happening unexpectedly that drains your finances. Long story short, you close down your business because you think, okay, I need to declare bankruptcy. After you declare bankruptcy, suddenly a lot of people give you condolences. Ah, don't worry, dude, it doesn't matter. You tried, you did your best. Now they all comfort you. And now you think, hold on a minute. When I started my business 5 years ago, very few of you congratulated me. Throughout the past 5 years, when I was struggling, none of you even talked to me. Some of you didn't even answer my text messages. And now suddenly, when I declared bankruptcy, all of you appear out of nowhere. This is a bit suspicious. Long story short, you find out that those people were upset that you wanted financial independence. The only thing they have is a 9 to 5 that drains them, and they thought, who are you to want better for yourself? So behind the scenes, they were spreading rumors about you on social media. Behind the scenes, they were harassing your clients, threatening your clients to not do business with you. They were putting you on blacklist. They were doing all these things behind the scenes. Just make sure your business would fail and you would end up either in debt or you would end up homeless or you end up in a 9 to 5. They want to humiliate you for going against their will. Their will was all of us have a 9 to 5 getting drained and nobody deserves any better. And because you decide I deserve better, they got upset with you. So they didn't come against you directly, but indirectly behind the scenes they were hindering you. It happens to a lot of men. Listen, some people end up in wheelchairs, paralyzed, due to accidents. And those accidents were caused by paranormal contention, started by other people. And now they're in a wheelchair, everyone treats them so kind and lovely. When they were still on both feet walking around, people ignored them. But now they're in a wheelchair, everyone is happy with them. Why? Because he's in a wheelchair, he is disadvantaged for life, everyone else feels happy. They feel, yes, we put him in his place. Who did we think did he think he was? Just going out there living life. Now he can't even live like he's in a wheelchair. People do things like this. They don't want better for themselves, so who are you to want better for you? The problem was they couldn't sabotage Jesus because Jesus was already established as a community leader. They tried to kill him, that didn't work out. And if they try to kill him now, it's going to look, and them trying to kill him, that news was all around. They exposed themselves. So this time they didn't directly hands to him, but it was still hindering him. Listen, many of you believers were watching this right now. The reason why you face difficulty in life right now is because you have unbelief from others towards you. Because many of you have been following me for a while, and I've been telling you all along to be active, decree, declare, and take steps in life. And now you are taking steps in life. You are decreeing, declaring, and you think, why these things keep happening? It's where you're at. By the way, when Jesus, before when Jesus was in his around 20 years old, and he left Nazareth, he went to Capernaum. I don't know where Capernaum is on the map right now. Wait, where's Capernaum anyway? But anyway, he went to Capernaum. Jesus left Nazareth. He didn't stay in Nazareth. Why did Jesus leave Nazareth? Because he knew very well these people don't want to face things. The people in Nazareth were neglectful. Nazareth could have easily become the financial center of all of Galilee and benefit all of Galilee, but people weren't willing to do anything. So Jesus realized, I need to get out of here. So Jesus left, and things went smoother for him. Some of you are listening to this. The solution for you is to move out. I'm not telling you to move to another country, but you may have to move out of the place where you're at. Maybe it's a village or the part of town you live in. Some of you need to move. Some of you need to relocate. Because the place where you're at right now, the public there will not accept you being better off. Let me look at Capernaum. Let's see what Capernaum is on the map. Capernaum is there at the lake. Okay. So let me get this straight. I didn't see it on the map here. But anyway, Jesus went to Capernaum, was still in Galilee, in another place. Jesus even went to the south often um, because he was baptized in the Jordan River. Jesus was active. He got things done. But he left Nazareth. Some of you need to leave the place you're at. And let's learn from Jesus' example. A lot of people will not get any better. They won't change for the better. They only get worse. Listen, Jesus, the only reason Jesus survived is because he was God in human form. He could change, he turned himself invisible and leave. If any other human male would have done this, he would have been lynched. It would have been over. If Jesus was just a common human male, just a common human being, and he went to Nazareth, they would have beaten him up and killed him. He would have been lynched. It would have been all over. They would have killed him, and that would have been dead. Jesus survived. And let me tell you, a lot of you who are now listening to me, this almost happened to you. The public almost lynched you. Maybe not by blowing up, not by jumping on you with physical violence, like happened to Jesus here, but a lot of you were about to be set up and killed. Or you were about to be set up to be put in prison for a crime you did not commit. Many of you were almost killed or disabled for life. But because of the protection from the Holy Spirit, you're still around. So the people in Nazareth were even wondered, how could Jesus escape? He escaped and later came back again. Listen, what Jesus did here, going back, was to teach us. This is not something you should do. If you're in a place and the people there do refuse to receive you in the good condition you're in, shake the dust off your feet and move on. Yes. Matthew 10:14. This is what Jesus said. There was instruction to the disciples when the disciples went out there to teach, preach, do all of that. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, leave that home or town and shake the dust off your feet. Okay, now let me go to the whole chapter over here. I want to give you the context of it. Hold on, no, not New King James. No. I want to go to, and I want to go to King James version for real. Here you can read Jesus had 12 disciples. He gave them power over unclean spirits and all of that. He names all the disciples over here. And back then, he told them only go to the house of Israel. That was a restriction for them back then, not for us. But this also counts for us. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out devils. Raising the dead was something exclusively they were able to do back then. I'm not saying God cannot give some believers the ability to do it right now, but listen, when someone dies is deceased, they're deceased. Exclusively back then, to establish himself, Christ gave disciples the ability to raise the dead. So don't go to a graveyard trying to raise people that passed away years ago. Don't do that. God didn't send you to do that, okay? Jesus actually gave them power to go out and do things. And let's see. And when you come into an house, salute it. Salute simply means send decree peace upon it. That's why I've been teaching you all to send peace out of you. When you come into an house, salute it. So bring peace upon it. And Jesus said, if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it's not worthy, let your peace return to you. And whosoever shall not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart out of that house or city, shake the dust off your feet. Verily I say unto you, it shall be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Before I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves, be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you up into the councils, they will scourge you in their synagogues, and ye shall be brought before the governors and kings for my sake, and for testimony against them and the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, take no thought how or what you shall speak, for it shall be given you in that same hour what you shall speak. For it's not you that speak, but the Spirit of your Father which speaketh in you. And the brother shall deliver up the brother unto death, and the father the child, and the children shall rise up against the parents, and cause them to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake, but he that endureth to the end shall be saved. Saved here doesn't mean to actually being saved from a lake of fire. It simply means being saved simply means operating in fullness of life in the earth now. When they persecute you in this city, flee ye into the other. For verily I say unto you, you shall not have gone over the city of Israel till the Son of Man become. The disciple is not above his master, nor the servant above his Lord. It is enough for the disciple he be as his master, and the servant as his Lord. If they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more shall they call them of his household? So Christ gave a lot of instructions over here. Provide neither gold nor silver nor brass in your purses. Okay, back then for them, Christ said, listen, when you walk in this power right now, finances will come your way. So don't worry about the finances. Just do what you have to do, and in the right time, finance will come towards you. Just what Christ was telling them back then. All right. Now, but just understand here, this was assignment specifically for disciples over there. Some of it applies to us, some of it doesn't. You hear me? Listen, what I'm putting out here is that the unbelief of the people around you can stop your life. A lot of believers develop diseases and sicknesses in their bodies. Why? Due to stress that's caused by the people's neglect towards them. Okay? Some believers even die of diseases and sicknesses because of this. Look, if the people around you are not willing to value themselves and want better for themselves, then you're dealing with toxic, negative minded people who just want to hold you back to feel relieved. And such people, when you don't give in to their restrictions, will explode on you. I'm telling you, as it did with Jesus. The same thing they did to Jesus over here, exploding on him and physically attack him as a whole crowd, they will do to you too. Today, you have police force around. And because you have police force around police stations, people don't do that quickly. Back then, you had no police station, you police officers back then. You had the Roman military, and you also had auxiliary troops and local patrols. But today, you have police forces around, and you can be charged in a court of law if you assault someone physically. This is what you have today. So that's why today also people are a bit more restrained. But the moment the police cannot enforce restraints anymore, this is how people become. You don't give in to the restrictions, they explode on you. It's simple as that. You don't allow them to sabotage you, they turn on you. So, what do we do as believers? We admit all of this and we examine who we are around. Look, if you're at a job now and you're dealing with unbelievers, and you know those unbelievers don't want any better, then don't talk about Jesus with them. Don't talk about your faith. Don't even mention improvement. Just shut your mouth about those things. Do your work. Be kind towards them. Do contribute to a good climate by talking to them and all of that, but don't get deep involved with them. When you're out of work, you're out of work. You don't deal with them. Simple as that. And then start looking for another job or join other believers in a venture so you don't have to be around them anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Do you understand what I just explained to you? We have to admit what we are around. Don't be in denial of how people around you are. If the people around you don't want any better for themselves, I'm sorry, why the heck should you even desire to be amongst them? And listen, some of you believers, you still long for people who don't want any better. And Jesus keeps telling you, cut it out. Okay. Some of you brothers in Christ, you're still crying about your ex-partner, your ex-wife, or your ex-girlfriend, whatever. And God's telling you, bro, cut it out. This woman was not good for you. She's not. She wasn't even stable. She was only training you. See her for what she is, not what you wanted her to be. You're crying because you lost what you wanted her to be. But guess what, dude? She was never what you wanted her to be. So you never had this great woman you thought you think you hoped she was. And why do you think you could make her that great if she was even willing to be better herself? Some of you ladies are still upset with some ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, whatever. And God is saying, lady, please, for real? You have all these male believers walking around with anointing, with power, move, and you still think about this loser from your past who didn't even serve me? Are you kidding me? Start seeing people for what they really are, not what you hope them to be. Too often, we look at people and we see what we want them to be for us. Listen, even if what you want them to be for you is proper, if you're married to someone, they should be loving and kind towards you. You want them to be loving and kind towards you, and you should, because they should be loving and kind towards you. But if they're not that way and they don't want to become, why are you still married to them? Why? If you're at the workplace and the people there are not, they just tolerate you because you do a good job, they don't actually welcome you and appreciate you, I'm sorry, they should be appreciating you and celebrating your effort at the workplace. They should. That's what you want them to do. And you're right for wanting that. But listen, that's not what's happening. What's happening is they're just draining you and they're taking all their issues on you. So you should eventually leave that place because you're being scapegoated. Simple as that. I'll rather have you on welfare doing a part-time job, having less money. I'd rather have you to move to a small apartment than to be in a situation where you're being violated over and over again. Not everyone is worth your effort. Not everyone is worth your presence. Just realize that. Jesus only went back the second time to Nazareth just to prove these people have not changed and they don't want any better. 2 years have passed and they were still angry at Jesus. The same Jesus they tried to murder 2 years earlier. They didn't even apologize, saying, Jesus, forgive us for turning on you. Jesus, sorry, that was bad, wrong for us. We changed. They didn't even apologize for trying to kill him. That means that if they could kill him right now, they would have done it. But they were only restrained, so I didn't do it. Wow. Have you experienced people like that in your life? They did you wrong or they neglected you and they refuse to admit their part and they refuse to be better. They just blame you for how they treated you. Have you experienced people like that? Let me know in the live chat. So now you know what you're dealing with. Those people, they can change and be better human beings. They can, but many of them will not. Many of them will end up as reprobates and they'll be cast to the lake of fire. Simple as that. Many of them will end up as reprobates. Not all of them. Some of them will change suddenly, but don't wait. Even if some of these people will change for the better years later, they're not better now. They're worse off now. So if you stay amongst them for years, you're going to be hindered. And by the time they do become better people, there's nothing left of you anymore. Some of you won't even be alive anymore because it have taken a toll on you. If people today don't want to be better, lower contact with them. If they become dangerous towards you, leave them swiftly. They don't have the right to be negative. They don't. But if they insist on being negative, that means they're out of their mind, means they're dangerous to be around. Why should you want to be around someone that's dangerous? I have a question to you. If you walk down, if you walk down in the city, let's say you're at an airport and now you see a man with a suicide vest on, are you going to confront him and say, dude, why carry a suicide vest? Take that off. Are you going to confront him and force him to take off the suicide vest? Let's say someone at an airport carries a suicide vest. Are you going to jump at them and force them to take off the suicide vest? Are you going to do that? Let me know in the live chat. Will you do that? I'm asking you a question. Will you jump on someone with a suicide vest, force them to take off the suicide vest? Will you do that? Let me know in the live chat. course you wouldn't do that. He carries a suicide vest. You jump on him, try to force to get off, and may pull the trigger, and both of you are dead. Everyone around is dead. The fact alone, he's willing to walk around with a suicide vest on, ready to explode himself and everyone else, shows you should get away from that. You cannot safely disarm this man or this woman. So even women often who tend to do things like this in areas where there's terrorism. But let me tell you, when people refuse to be better and be safer, they are just like terrorists with suicide fists. Their energy fields are toxic and laden with pollution, and that pollution becomes explosive over time. So they don't carry a physical suicide fist will blow up their physical bodies, everyone else physically, but they carry an energy. They have all this pollution in their energy fields, and at some point, all the pollution is going to explode. And if it doesn't explode, it's going to affect you the wrong way. The fact is, they don't even want to admit they're in a bad condition. So being around them alone will put you in danger too. None of you would confront someone with a suicide vest. All of you would run away. Then why then are you confronting people who don't want to be better and safer? You should want to be better and safer as a human being. You should. It's better for you and everyone else. Why wouldn't you want to be better and safer? If they don't want to be better and safer, it means they're perfectly fine being dangerous to both themselves. They're perfectly fine hurting themselves and other people. Why would you want to confront someone like that who's perfectly fine hurting themselves? If they're perfectly fine hurting themselves, that means they're also perfectly fine hurting you. If they don't want to admit that they need deliverance and they need to be better off, that means they're perfectly fine harming themselves. If they're perfectly harming themselves, why do you think that they won't be perfectly fine harming you? They will be perfectly fine harming you. So why are you confronting someone like that? Why are you staying on people like that? Are you kidding me? Use your brain. Listen, if you have a course tutor that holds negative beliefs towards you, finish the course because the course is not permanent. Finish the course, succeed the course, and get out of there. Simple as that. Listen, I see believers confronting people they should have just run away from. And not run away in form of fear, but listen, if someone is dysfunctional and it's painful for them to recognize as dysfunctional, that can happen. If someone is dysfunctional and it's painful for them to admit they're dysfunctional, that can happen. Of course, we'll deny being dysfunctional, we'll make excuses, but it doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just painful for them to recognize they're dysfunctional. Give them time. They will admit, you know what, proceed to tell the truth. I'm a bit dysfunctional, I need help. Fine. Most people will deny that they have a dysfunction when you confront them. This is what most human beings do, but it doesn't mean they're all evil or bad people. But when someone over time keeps denying that they have an issue, now it's a problem. If they deny it, if they deny it in the beginning, so what they deny it? Eventually they have to admit it. But if they insist on denying over a long period of time, especially after 6 months, now you know there's something deeply wrong with this individual. So just because people deny something doesn't mean they're bad and toxic people. No. But if they keep on denying over a long period of time, now you know something is seriously wrong with this individual. You need to get out of here. Simple as that. If someone has difficulty admitting a bad situation, show some empathy and tell them, listen, I give you space to process it, and then give them space to process it. But if they, or after 6 months or even a year, still don't want to admit the bad situation, walk away from those people. I'm telling you, walk away. Don't confront them, do not anything, just walk away from them. Listen, when people don't want some responsibility, because being a safe and healthy human being comes with obligations and responsibilities towards the community. A lot of people don't want obligations or responsibilities, just want to escape. People that insist on escaping, they will become extremely upset with you when you hinder their escape. If you ever hinder their escape, they'll explode on you. That's what happened to Jesus over here. They exploded on him, but he was able to survive. Please do not put yourself in such a position, please. If people are cowardly enough to insist in a bad situation, then you'll be courageous enough to get away from there. Simple as that. All right? Okay. Are there any questions about this topic? Let me know, please. Let me know. Are there any questions related to this topic? Let me know. Okay, I'll wait for another minute to see if I get any questions. I know when you came in, Kim West, what I would explain. If you're in a situation where the people around you are not willing to get any better, shut your mouth towards them when it comes to you wanting to have better. Actually work on things getting better and get away from those people. Move out, whether it's out of town or out of the city or out of the neighborhood, just move out. And stop being stuck in feeling targeted. A lot of people that face retaliation develop a victim attitude. Oh, I'm being targeted. Look at me. I'm a targeted individual. Blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Yes, it's happening, but don't stay in a victim position. You have to take another position in life. You have to go from struggling to thriving. You have to go from surviving to thriving. That's how you should go. You should have a thriving mentality. And let me tell you, what happened to Jesus here in Luke chapter 4, it almost happened to me multiple times. Now that I reflect back. 2020, they tried to do this to me. So it's also one of the main reasons why by then I left the Netherlands and decided to live somewhere else for several months. I ended up in South Korea. And if this year try to do it again, I'm ahead of them anyway. So praise God. Listen, see people for what they are and accept them for what they are. You don't approve nor endorse what they are, but you accept the situation of what they are and you act accordingly. Well, being stopped physically, it happened maybe a few times in my life, but I would always get away from physical altercation, so that was a good thing. If I didn't, I wouldn't be alive by now. But listen, once you walk in the resurrection power, they won't be able to come to you physically close. That close to you physically. They'll try to do it at a distance. Well, Walborg, if the public wants to stop you, they'll find people to stop you. If necessary, they'll even hire criminals to beat you up and all of that. They do. They'll even hire people to sabotage your car, to get you into a car accident, to get you paralyzed or killed, whatever. People go extremely far to preserve their daily ease. That's how worldlings are. Not all worldlings go that far, but in general, worldlings are willing to go quite far to preserve their ease. So just beware. All right. You know what to do now. Replay the live stream if necessary. Watch my other live streams about similar topics. And please, don't put yourself unnecessarily at risk. Don't cost your pearls before swine, please. If people are so, if people are so out of their mind that they insist in misfortune and they insist in ruin, then let them perish in the ruin. Because they're going to say, "Well, nobody asked you to make the world a better place." Okay, but nobody asked them to keep misfortune around. But they don't want to talk about that. It's only when they're upset they say nobody asked you to do this. That okay, but nobody asked you guys to keep misfortune around either. That affects all of us. Hmm. Okay, Les Brown. Let me look at what Les is saying. Okay, Les is asking, you're living in a place for 8 years. David has lost his mind every 6 months. As he and his son is operating in faith and abundance of faith, should we move? Look, I wouldn't tell you to move, but you know what? I pray your son will find his own place soon, a big place, and maybe from time to time go and stay at your son's place. So you're away from there. We as believers should not be fleeing all the time. Look, if you have to get out of a bad situation, you do that. But we're not. But okay, we don't go that far that every time people get upset, we end up leaving because then we'd end up homeless without nothing in life. Okay, just make sure you have flexibility in life. You don't have to give up your house where you live, especially not if you purchase the house, but just get out of the house if you from time to time. So you're not around the same people all the time. That's why from time to time in the Netherlands, I catch the train and I visit places. Not just to spend my weekends that way, but also because I don't want to be in the same location too often, because that's going to make it easy for you to be targeted. Above all, calm down and look around you. Calm down and look around you from time to time. Make it your habit to calm down and look around you. Check the time of what goes on around you. Don't be uninterested. Don't say I'm not interested. Be interested in life and look down, look around you a little bit more. Les Brown, if you're not affected by the neighbor that much, let him explode or her explode. Who cares? Only intervene if he or she becomes suicidal or whatever. But for the rest, just continue living life. Continue to live life. And here's another thing: we need to learn to intervene in our communities too. But that's going to be another topic that I already discussed it in the live stream before, but I may address it one more time, more in detail. But anyway, thank you all for being here. Keep agreeing with Christ, and let's pray for your neighbor, because I think your neighbor needs psychological help too. Pray for the deliverance of your neighbor too. Just pray for his or her deliverance in Christ's mighty name. Well, thanks for being here, and I'll see you all next time. Be at peace.